Now, there's a lot of discomfort when it was reported that the president had chartered for $2.3 million in terms of a plane. You have clarified this, but who could have been the source of this discomfort?
Well, it really has to do with certain disgruntled elements with our national airliner. You see, there are certain pecuniary benefits that attend to chartering an Air Zimbabwe plane. Benefit that flows to the staff, benefit that flows to everyone else who is involved in the movement of the president around that chartered plane. And the disposition of those persons who stand to derive some kind of financial benefit from that travel has been to ensure that whatever the inconvenience, whatever the incapacity of Air Zimbabwe, we are stuck with Air Zimbabwe. But in our case, we have a different template altogether. We have to look at the issue of cost. We have to look at the issue of convenience. We have to look at the issue of safety. We have to look at the capacity of the airline to be able to service other and discharge other duties, whilst at the same time honoring the charter obligations that are in fact contractual. So in this particular case, we had about 3 courts that came from different suppliers of air services. One court, I think, was upward of $2 million US dollars, and that's the quote that we had initially. Then, of course, Air Zimbabwe had a quote which was just under 2 million, but not very far from the figure quoted by the other airline. Then, on our way to Abidjan, we had a discussion in terms of whether government was prudently securing services, in this particular case, air services. And then it turns out that we had a businessman on the plane who said, but how can you pay all that much? If you really try to scout around and see whether you are really getting best value for money, because I am aware of an air service that can give you a long-haul plane at much less than you have been quoted. And then we challenged him. And within a day, that businessman had come back to us with a firm commitment from an airline that was going to not only give us a long-haul plane, which means a plane that would fly non-stop to China, but do so for just 1.4 million, which meant a net saving of upward of 800,000 US dollars. So really, if you look at the 2 costs from the first 2 bidders, and then of course what was now being offered to government, economic prudence, bids that we go for the cheaper service to the extent that 1, it is cheaper, 2, it is a long haul, 3, it enhances convenience on the part of the traveling delegation.
Now, was the release of the plane's invoices by the Office of the President Cabinet the first step in entrenching transparency?
I think you will see more and more of this. I think when you govern, you must not just govern, but be seen to be governing. And one hallmark of a government that is seen to be governing is a government that makes available information to the citizenry. After all, our government does not create wealth. It does not create money. What it does is it takes from the taxpayer monies for its own daily use, which means that money is money that is held in trust and used in trust. And ultimately, the final shareholder is the taxpayer, which is why, in fact, it is only natural and only sound that in the event of there being a misunderstanding, government must be ready to come forward with all the necessary documentation to explain its own decisions and how sound, and of course justify the soundness of those decisions to the citizenry.
And then I want to then say, the disturbing images, and I think as the average citizen, this is something complained about in the former dispensation. Kids of high-profile figures who were part of the trip, and now we used to complain about this. Is it going to stop? When will it stop?
Well, I noticed there's been quite a bit of controversy around the travel of one of the sons of the president. Let me explain to you the makeup of the delegation that went to China. There was a delegation that went in the context of the Joint Commission, and to the extent that this was a long-awaited Joint Commission. But but one which was also critical to changing the fortunes of the country. You notice that the delegation covered the whole gamut of issues, from infrastructure, energy, commercial deals, the data servicing, financial services, you name it. And it meant that for every area of focus, it was important for us to produce a complement of persons or interlocutors who would be able to speak confidently and speak knowledgeably to each particular area, so that the Chinese are given answers that are satisfactory. So that is a delegation that went well before the president left for China. Then we had a delegation of business people that went on the Saturday. The president leaves on the Monday. Was it Monday or Sunday? I'm getting a bit mixed up. The president left a little later. After that, business delegation left. And within that delegation was young Mnangagwa. He went in his own right, on his own steam, to pursue deals that he is chasing with his Chinese partners, which meant really his being in China more or less the same time that the father was there, was not just fortuitous, but also a basic decision which any normal Zimbabwean businessman would take, namely to take advantage of the political interaction, which then provides an umbrella for one to interact with one's own business counterparts, because then the environment is a lot more hospitable for best results. So really, I want to see young Mnangagwa as a businessman, a Zimbabwean who is pursuing separate interests outside of government, which is why he cannot draw from government coffers, and which is why his program did not even coincide with the movement of the parents. As a matter of fact, when I saw something by way of a tweet from young Mnangagwa, I went to the president and the first lady and said, young Mnangagwa has tweeted, to indicate that his own business contacts were making fantastic progress. Except back home, this thing is playing out very badly, in the sense that people think that it's more of the past, which has now obtruded into the new dispensation. Then the president's reaction was to say, but where is he? And by then, when Zhang, we didn't have him. We had gone to Angui. Again, we didn't have him, which meant young Mnangagwa remained in Beijing, which is where his business counterparts was. He wasn't part of our delegation. And really, coincidence and causality are very different.
You tune into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hardest radio in town. The question that I want to ask here from a listener, we're just going to open this because it was open just now. I think it's something you respond. He says, what role does Mnangagwa's son have in government so that he can travel with his fathers using taxpayers' money? This is nepotism. Leave this to other citizens. Charamba is a fleeting reality. We can't fund trips and benefits individuals. So the question I'll ask from there is like, you're saying what you're saying. I still need to understand the separation. Like, for example, you're saying they happen to be in the same country together, but that conflating of, he's there as, that he might be taking advantage of the fact that his father is there at the same time. How does a person who's sitting at home not make that connection?
The only trouble, Larry, is the fact that we didn't have a single businessman called Mnangagwa Jr. Collins. That's his real name. We had a whole host of business people, bankers, industrialists, traders, infrastructure, business propositions that took advantage of the state visit to come to China more or less about the same time. What I can't quite appreciate is why there's this disproportionate focus on young Mnangagwa, who is just one of the many, and not on the many other business people who took advantage of exactly the same leg to situate their own contacts with their own counterparts. I think essentially as Zimbabweans, we must get away from an easy reading of situations, but more importantly, we must also not try and, merely on the basis of parentage, deny a Zimbabwean their constitutional right to pursue their own interests at no expense at all to the taxpayer, and I want to really disabuse the person who has just posed the question, because I thought I was speaking in very plain English, that the young man went to China on his own steam, not on the taxpayers' money. But more importantly, he is a Zimbabwean, he has a business acumen, he has a right, just as you and me does, to pursue his own interests for as long as his interests do not in any way stand in the way of government business, but more importantly, those interests do not derive any financial benefits from the fact of his parentage. So, and this is exactly what happened. So really, there will always be misconceptions, because ultimately, you are condemned or praised by whose son or whose daughter you are, except we must be a little more mature than that.
I want to go to the issue of Air Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe Airways fiasco.
Yes.
What is the latest on this deal?
I don't quite know why it has been called a fiasco. What has happened is the Malaysian Airlines was busy rebranding, and this had on the heels of a very bad tragedy that happened around one of their aeroplanes. So really, what Air Malaysia is doing is to discard its 777, its fleet of 777s. And we saw that as an opportunity for us to, as it were, retool Air Zimbabwe. But Air Zimbabwe was burdened by huge debts, historical debts, or what we call legacy debts, such that it could not fly to many places without having its fleet impounded. So there was therefore a decision to, as it were, create a new enterprise with a different name, so as to warehouse that legacy debt and ensure that it doesn't encumber the relaunch of a new line under a different rubric or under a different name. This is exactly how this whole concept of Zimbabwe Airways came about. It doesn't amount to any confusion. What it does is it is an employing of a very standard corporate practice in an environment of indebtedness. Now, what really is at issue is the fact that, one, have we finished paying for the 4 planes that we expect to be delivered to Zimbabwe? What are the conditions of the settlement of that transaction? And as I speak to you just now, Honorable Dr. Joram Gumbo left for Malaysia, and our hope is that maybe in a matter of a week or so, we'll have 2 of our assets from that transaction landing onto the Robert Mugabe International Airport, which will then begin to mark the beginning of a retooling of Air Zimbabwe by whatever name, to make sure that it gets back to its heydays, so that it can really ply the skies and do so with pride as a national airline. So in simple terms, I was saying we're expecting 2 planes next week. Yes, because for now, that's what we have paid for. What we need to do is to always bear in mind that the delivery of aeroplanes cannot outrun the payment schedule. And in any case, we owe Malaysia some money. We owe China some money. We owe the IMF some money. Our debt servicing record has not been that too good, such that our worthiness in terms of international writing, both bilateral and multilaterally, is quite low, which is why people are insisting on cash before delivery, which is what, in fact, is slowing down the delivery of the 4 planes. So then, will it come under Air Zimbabwe, or will it come under Zimbabwe Airways? Well, I'm speaking from the perspective of the President's office. Really, from our perspective, this is an operational issue. There is a way in which the responsible ministry will have to take a conscious decision, mindful of the legacy issues, to see how best to relaunch that national airline under whatever name. In any case, call a race by a different name, it will still smell the same. The issue is we must have an airline that plies the skies, that contributes to this economy, and what is more, that really carries our flag and helps in the rebranding of the country.
I want to take a quick break. Just get in touch with us on 0731 168 045. That's our WhatsApp number. And our call-in number being 0772 168 045 is ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town.